All right, welcome back, everybody. Hope you had a good coffee break and you're energized, full of caffeine and sugar, ready to go. We have a really great talk here coming up. I think it's going to be an interesting one. Our next speaker, he has been building a bunch of cryptography libraries. Like he was working on crypto Swift, but then he thought, you know, cryptography, it's too easy. I'm going to go build my own IDE instead. That's way more fun. You're also going to find out now why I got this job as an MC, because I'm the only person available who can actually pronounce the speaker's name. And I want you all to give a very, very warm welcome to my good friend, Mr. Marcin Krzyzanowski.
All right, thanks. Hi. Welcome. Germany, Switzerland, France, etc. I will talk about that Swift IDE. I don't know if you know what the IDE is, but I'm pretty sure you know what a Swift is, right? Just 2 words about me. My name is Marcin Krzyzanowski. And you can see my Twitter handle, where you can contact me. I have an account on GitHub, and I did some crypto stuff with a crypto Swift and Objective PGP is OpenPGP implementation. But I also did online Swift for Playground Run, when you can run Swift online. Just recently, I started working on a Swift Studio.app. You can open, there's something on this site, and you can sign up for a beta. And I also have a mustache, because I have a mustache on the avatar. Okay, let's start with some history. You know, we have a 2019, so our development is quite different than in the, I don't know, 1970s, right? In the 1970s, the computers were big, and if we were lucky, there was a printer. So there was an output once we read the performance card or whatever was the name. And about 1975, there was a revolution. The system called Maestro 1 by the German company was introduced with a keyboard, with the CPU, and with the actual editor, compiler, and linker. Why this is the first revolution in IDE? Before Maestro 1, if you want to get the output from the machine, you had to fill the page of your code, press enter or whatever, and then it was processed. Here, whenever you pressed enter or you send a comment, it was immediately executed and you get the feedback. So yeah, there was the times, right? They were even covered in Spiegel. I think it's Spiegel. I can't read that, but they were quite popular and famous at the time. There's more than 22,000 installations on the worldwide. This company is no longer on the market, of course. A few years later, Debase happened. You know what a Debase is? Did you ever use Debase? You did, yeah. Okay, 2, 3. Yeah, that's very interesting what happened with the Debase. I didn't use it directly, but I used to work on a Microsoft Business Solutions stack, and we have an implementation in one company. When you implement a new system, it is normal that data is duplicated in old system and a new system for some time, for the transition time. And there, the old system was written in Debase. A new system was Microsoft, Windows, and everything, SQLite. And believe me, this Debase was really reliable. We had a lot of problems with a new solution, but the Debase was really, really, really good. So yeah, 1980, Debase introduced on the computer, on the PC, right? Apple II, IBM PC, CP/M as a operating system. It comes with a text editor, There was a language called Debase, similar to Pascal, interpreted, I think. And it was base, database with a language. You have a whole package with you. Oh yeah, it was sold, there's an interesting fact I have not. Previously it was called Vulkan. It was written by some guy. Vulkan was renamed to Debase, and the price raised from $50 to $695. And the software quickly became a huge success. Right? It is good to raise the price. Few years later, about the same time, the Smalltalk AT was released. Smalltalk AT is the revolutionary language at that time. It introduced the objective programming. Here we can see it on Xerox machine, and why this is interesting. Well, we now know that at least more than one thing was stolen from Xerox, right? There was a macOS and there was a Smalltalk, because Smalltalk was implemented on macOS. And what was new here? Well, it was graphic, of course. This browser, you could browse properties of the data. Then you had an editor and a debugger. Yeah, it was full package. And this is my favorite, 84. Whoever used Pascal? Yeah, about that time, Pascal was the language, not the C. Pascal, because everything was written in Pascal. There was a time when structural programming was very popular, and guy who wrote Turbo Pascal became very rich over the time. Turbo Pascal came with this full package IDE. It was really good. I remember I was working on Borland Pascal. It's basically Pascal, but next version it was bought by Borland. It was so convenient. There was an editor and there was a debugger. It just works and very fast. Then 1984, same year, but that was revolution. Do you use Emacs in 2019? There's a guy. You? Okay, so apparently Emacs is still very popular because Emacs is, it's like I said, it's everything. If you install the Windows version of Emacs, you will find the games there. It's just a text editor, right? But it's so scriptable that you can run everything with Emacs. The full history of IDE is quite long. This is just a, you see? This is extract. I will not go through everything, just interesting parts. 1986 from our field, Macintosh Programmers Workshop. This is the developer environment by Apple for the Mac Plus. Why for the Mac Plus? Because that was the first computer that was able to run this application. It was set of separate programs that worked together. There was editor, compiler of the few languages over the time, and debugger. Two debuggers over the time. So you see the pattern. There's always editor, compiler, linker, and debugger. This is what most of the IDE was created for. Interesting fact about Macintosh Programmers Workshop. Before that, there was a Lisa workshop for Lisa computers. And guess what? Lisa workshop was a separate operating system from Lisa operating system. Because it was not possible to build a program for Lisa operating system in Lisa operating system. You needed workshop Lisa operating, something like this. You boot the different operating system. Well, that was times, right? 1993, CodeWarrior. This Macintosh thing was quite popular, although the tool over the time was declined and programmers chose the CodeWarrior that was not provided by Apple, but was very helpful over the time when the PowerPC transition happened, because basically they had better compilers. 1997, Visual Studio 97. This is the first version of Visual Studio that was called Visual Studio. On Windows, of course. Do you ever use Visual Studio? Yeah, me too. I remember this one. So it introduced this concept of UI builder, right? And Visual Studio is here for today. Like, we can still use it. The current version is probably 2019 or something. 2001, Java is very popular, just happened, and Eclipse arise. It was in 2001, full IDE for Java and for other languages. And see, this is the year 2018, and Eclipse is still the most popular idea, Java IDE. So it's very good. It's very good for the job that was created, but over the time, it packed with a lot of tools that we don't really appreciate any longer. 2003, Xcode 1. 2003, so it's 15 years ago, right? About. Xcode 1. Apple released. At that time, the editor and the interface builder were a separate application, just like today. Instruments is a separate application, but there was a connection. Like you could even drag, I think. I'm not sure if the drag and drop worked, but I think there was some connection between those two applications. It's changed over the time. Xcode 10 is different. In 2017, 2 years ago, Visual Studio Code happened. I don't know, the name is so strange, right? Because it's really not a visual. It was just an editor at that time. But it took over all the development. Now it's, I would say, the most popular code editor in the category. You can find everything for Visual Studio. And the year is 2019. Guess what? Oh my God, Swift Studio. Yeah, by Marcin Krzyzanowski. I don't know if you see the Silicon Valley, the TV series that was by Gavin Belson. So I wanted to do something like this. Yeah. Well, Swift Studio, this is the project I'm working on currently. And Swift Studio is aiming to be a Swift IDE. Not only Swift, but like a focus on Swift. And the first iteration is on Swift on server. But with this Swift Studio name, it's kind of a problem. Because it turns out Apple has a trademark for the word Swift. And it may happen that the lawyers make a call and ask you to change the name. So if that will happen, yeah, I have some thoughts. But I like the last one. It's the ID formerly known as Swift Studio Tifkas. Like Tifkas is a nice name, right? I could use like a product. Okay, let's look at the landscape of the Swift development today on the macOS. Do you know what this is? Emacs. Yeah, this is the Emacs. A friend of mine maintained Emacs LSB. This is the project that adds the language server protocol to Emacs. And thanks to that, Emacs can talk to Swift language protocol server and do some basic things with the Swift. There's no building here. There's just editing. You can browse the code. Visual Studio Code, Visual Studio Code, the same. Very easy to install. There's a highlighting, and you can navigate over the code. Upcode. We have a JetBrains here. Who's from JetBrains? There's one guy, should be. Maybe he's in the room then. JetBrains provides upcode. This is the competitor of Xcode. And of course, it supports Swift next to Objective-C. It opens Xcode projects, can build it, it's a full package. There's Xcode, Xcode 10 here. So everyone knows what is it. It's the base reference of Swift development. And there's a Swift Studio. It looks quite similar, isn't it? Yeah, this is the current state I'm working on. In this example, CryptoSwift. It's in a stage I can actually build and run some of my projects already. See what's inside. Editor, very important. Editor is very important, and there's a lot of work because the bar is already very high. You have to implement everything, like insertion, highlighting of the lines. Everything have to be implemented, and it takes time. What I'm using, I based on, this is the Mac application, of course. I based on an NSText view, which is the component in AppKit just for that. And where it failed, I use Cortex, which is the NSText view is built on. Cortex is the framework for displaying fonts, text on view, on layer. What the problems are there? The Swift Studio is written in Swift, and AppKit is not. So, and everything is about string. Those two strings are different. Like there's an NS string and there's a string. I don't know if you're familiar with the problems with the Swift and NS string, with the string and a string. But there's a bridging, right? And this bridging can be very time-consuming, performance-consuming, because it happens all the time. And string, when you work with string, all these indexes is a hell. And when you work with the NS string, you just get the simplified version of string. So it's different. And you have to convert one to another. NS string internally is UTF-16. Swift string is UTF-16. And this is the only setup when it is fast. If I use UTF-8, things get really, really bad. Oops. Oh no. I want it back. Yeah. Okay. Why this draw? Because I have an iPad Pro, and I begin work on this presentation sitting on my couch, and I will do that just with my pencil. Range and NS range. This is the indexing of string. You have to be very careful what is the value that you get from AppKit. Because in AppKit you get position 6. What does it mean for AppKit and what does it mean for string? You have to basically convert the index back and forth. It's very, very easy to make a mistake. And NSText storage, if you're familiar with the NSText view or UI text view, there's NSText storage is the model of that view, and if you subclass NSText storage in Swift, it's unusable. So that class should not be subclassed in Swift. It can be only implemented in Objective-C. There's a performance issue, there's a bug reported, and there's no easy fix for that. This bridging is still happening, and it's killing all the performance. For the editor, for highlighting, I'm using a Swift syntax. It's a project by Apple, project of guys from Source something division, I don't remember. But the Swift syntax is available on a GitHub, and it parses Swift code basically, and creates AST, abstract source tree, that I can later on use to manipulate or to recognize some parts of the source, like where is the space, where is the class declaration, where is the type declaration. It not gives me every information. It just, like here, there's a string, so it will say, okay, this is a type, but the information about what the type is not there, right? It just passes. To get information about the full time of the full every identifier, I would need to parse all the dependencies, all the source code to get inheritance, to build. That's all. And this is why the indexing goes in. Indexing is the thing that you might know from Xcode that happens and never ends. Yeah, so the same. Because now it's the feature of Clang and Swift compiler. It happens while building and gives us more information about source code. So combining Swift syntax, just parsing, with the index built during building the project, we can actually get the whole information about the source we're working on. LSP is Language Server Protocol. Have you heard this term, Language Service Protocol? Yeah, it's pretty popular these days. It's quite new, like, I don't know, a year maybe this concept has. And Swift has one server protocol I will talk about in a minute. And I use that for the editor as well. What I'm not using regular expression for highlighting because the performance is not there, and I'm not using NTLR. You know what is this project? It's a parser generator, quite popular in Java world, but the outputs in more languages, C++, and there's a Swift output. So it basically gives the language grammar. It's produce the code that can parse you input based on the grammar, but it's too slow. I don't know. I don't think the NTLR itself is slow, but slow is probably the Swift implementation. And this language server protocol comes from the Swift Studio Code and comes from Microsoft, because Microsoft is cool now. Everyone loves Microsoft. Everyone started using language server protocol. So language server protocol is a process that communicate with the editor, just commands about the language. You can say, I opened the file. Okay, so the server is doing the same. Tell me what is on the line 30. Okay, so server analyze and gives the information back. It works like with the workspaces. It has everything with the language server protocol is taken from Visual Studio Code. So it might not fit to any editor that well, but like we have to adjust. For Swift language server, there is a SourceKit LSP, and SourceKit LSP is a project on the GitHub, Apple SourceKit LSP, maintained by Apple, and is built on top of SourceKit. Do you know what a SourceKit is? Who doesn't? Now? No. In the early days of Swift, Xcode had this problem that whenever the source kit crashed, display this in the editor. It was quite annoying, so now when it crashes, we just don't see that. It still crashes, but we just don't see that. And technically, it's built. SourceKit LSB is a process that is run next to your process, and it's load SourceKit framework, like a library. So the SourceKit LSB can crash, and it has to be managed by the client. Whatever SourceKit framework provide, the SourceKit LSB can implement. But it's not now, and it's not very viable. Some things happen there, but it's like a pet project now. The plan is to force Xcode to use SourceKit LSB, language server protocol, but I don't know. It's not going to happen this year, definitely. Okay. After the editor, there is a build system. And what I'm using the Swift Package Manager. Did you have a chance to use Swift Package Manager in your projects? Like any? Yeah, but there was mostly a server Swift, right? Or command line maybe, because there's no other use. It has like 5 years, and I don't know. But good thing about Swift Package Manager, it provide the public interface to deal with the projects. It's called libswift PM, and you can link to this library and use that. So the SourceKit LSP is using that. If they use that, so I'm using that as well. But in the middle, there is a LLbuild tool. I don't know if you ever heard about LLbuild. It's called Swift Build Tool in a toolchain. That's the new build system in Xcode since Xcode 10? 9? 10, let's say 10. The new build system comes from Swift, and Swift Package Manager is using that. And I use that in the Swift Studio as well. What it does, basically, generate some file that is the manifest, and you can execute this manifest, and you can build your whole project. In Xcode, there's a path when you can find the manifest generated by Xcode. It's very straightforward, very helpful to use. Since the Swift Studio is focused on a server, I thought that the Docker support is quite important for developers. It was important for me. And Docker because of Linux. You know, there's a difference between building your app on macOS and building on Linux. There's a difference in runtime. On Linux, the foundation is the Swift Foundation. This is the project started from scratch, not full implementation of NS Foundation. On macOS, it just bridged to NS Foundation, which is different code, right? So let's say you develop application macOS, and it might not even compile on Linux. So it is important to build, to test, to run your code on the environment that will be used to deploy. And this is what I'm doing with the Docker. Oops, why? The Docker, there's an image, and whenever it is possible, I just use either the container, either the host machine. And the same with the debugger. Debugger, this is LLDB because Swift is built on LLVM stack. LLDB has this nice feature that you can communicate between server of the debugger and the client of the debugger. That gives me the possibility that I can debug code that is compiled for a different machine. In this case, for Linux. So I can, without leaving my comfort zone, without leaving the macOS, I debug a program that is run on Linux. Those are the components that I already been working on and are somehow implemented. There's a lot of work to work on any of that. I'm proud of LSP support, language server protocol, because this abstraction it gives me the opportunity to provide a very good JavaScript environment as well, which is very important when you're doing a Swift on server, right? I will show you how it looks. This is the Kitura project, open, and build on macOS. See, here, this is not a file system. The files are from the project, so it depends how the project is configured. The files are from there. Kitura, run on the macOS. And now, I choose a Docker image, and just run, and it's the same. So this is the deployment to Docker container. Yeah, I think it's neat, because you don't have to touch even the console to deploy application. About these third-party tools, of course, everything is broken. It's not, although it's very hard to use. Everything is in alpha stage, like Swift syntax, API is changing with every release, almost. And yeah, it's quite hard to build properly. SourceKit, it looks like a pet project created by the one or two engineers, but it's not really maintained with the peace I would expect from the project like this. And Swift PM, Swift Package Manager, 5 years old project, still a lot of problems. I don't know, still not a mainstream. There's a problem with linking. You know what the linking is? If you want not use the stock toolchain, but you have your own toolchain, really building Swift PM is a hell, and it's quite slow. It's basically quite slow. On my MacBook i9, the resolving of few dependencies can take 30 seconds, which is really horrible. Yeah, that's about it about the project. If you're interested with the project, I encourage you to check out the swiftstudio.app. There's a form. You can sign in. There's about 3,000 people already waiting. And if you're on the list, and I said the beta will be in January, it's not. It will be maybe next month. I'm sorry. Yeah, but I encourage you to sign up. I will send up the beta. If you want, I have the stickers, not with me, but I can send you later. I forgot. Happens. Yeah, that's all about Swift IDE. Thank you.